But Rabbah says there's an additional requirement, and that is we need to confirm that it was done lishma as well. That was really the main chiddush that we learned yesterday, and we started this Gemara. We'll retrace our steps a little bit to the Avdalah and Beis. None we learned. Maybe get Medina Sayam. If someone brought a get, Medina Sayam. And he cannot say b'fani nechtam, and like we learned yesterday, because he was a cherish. If there are Edom that could say testimony that the Edom signed, they recognize their signatures, you could do regular kiyum. The Gemara asked, what does it mean he cannot say b'fani nechtam? Why can't he say it? Because he's a cherish. Correct the Gemara, cherish can't be a shliach at all. Cherish bar isuya gita hu, but nana kol ksherim labi is a get chutz mecherish shoyte v'katan. And as Rashi says, because they're not bardas. Vam Rabbi Yosef, so Rabbi Yosef explained, hacha b'may askinan, k'lon shenosnu law kishahu pikeach. The shliach fulfilled his shlichus as a pikeach. He took the get, he became a shliach le'locha, and he handed it over to the woman. But he just didn't say b'fani nechtav u b'fani nechtam. But his bekaloymar b'fani nechtam achen ischarish. So all of the nesidas haget was perfect. The whole problem was he wasn't able to say b'fani nechtav u b'fani nechtam. Zok to Gemara. Based on this, according to Rava, that the only concern that we have is that we should have a kiyum on the shtar, a kiyum on the get. So the fact that you have Edom to be Mekayim de Chasima will mitigate our concern. But L'Rabba, who is concerned as well, maybe this get was not written L'Shma, Kasha. How could you possibly explain why merely being Mekayim de Chasima with Edom, how will that mitigate the concern that Rabbah has about L'Shma? This Brisa or Mishnah that says that you can get away with only kiyum and not worry about L'Shma is speaking at a point where people were educated already, and even in Chutz La'aretz, even in Medina Hayam, everybody already knew that a get has to be L'Shma, and therefore there is no longer concern at all about L'Shma that needs to be mitigated. Correct the Gemara, Ihachi Yachal Nami. If there is no more concern, if there is no longer a concern of L'Shma, so then even if a person could say b'fani nechtam, there's no reason for him to say it anymore, because there's no concern. There is no concern of L'Shma. And for the Gemara, no, we still kept up the Gzeira, and the Chazal still kept up that you need to say b'fani nechtam. Why? Gzeira shema yachser davar l'kel kulai. We're concerned that people will start forgetting about L'Shma. So if the custom is that you always say b'fani nechtam, even if it turns out that people forget the halacha, we'll still be able to verify. That it was L'Shma. Did you, by mistake? I think you unplugged this or you loosened the cord because it just went dead. This thing over here. Could you push the cord in? Did it get unplugged over there, or maybe at the machine itself? Maybe over here. Did it loose something? No, I'm not sure it stopped working. Oh, yeah, it just started working. Okay, go off it. Thank you. Dr. Gemara, Ihachi Yachal Nami. Dr. Gemara, no, Shema Yachshad over the Kokoloi. Fact number, Ihachi Eino Yachal Nami. If that's the case, that we want to keep the Gzera going, Shema Yachshad over the Kokoloi. So if you want to keep the Gzera going, and we still need to say B'fani Nechtam, so if a Cherish cannot say it, it should be a problem with the get, because the requirement is still in place. Dr. Gemara, no. Pikeach when it's Cherish, it's such an unlikely case that he was a Pikeach, he did a Shlichus, and then just after he did the Shlichus, when he's about to say B'fani Nechtam, at that moment he becomes a Cherish. That's a Milsa D'Lo Shlicha. That's a very unlikely case. In really unusual cases, the mandate of B'fani Nechtam is not there. Practically, there are other cases that are unusual, and there still is a mandate of B'fani Nechtam and B'fani Nechtam. But Isha D'Lo Shlicha, It's not normal for the woman to be a shliach leilacha. The Tanan ha'isha atma mevia gita. We learned that the woman herself can bring her get, meaning it's a crazy case because she went to her husband, and her husband gave her the get, and her husband says, "I don't want you to be mekabel to get now for yourself. I don't want to get to be chal until you get back to Bez and back to your city." It's a crazy scenario. Nevertheless, there also she must tell Bezdin when she arrived at her destination that b'fani nechtab b'fani nechtam. And for the Gemara, there it's different. All shlichusin require that you have to say it. So you might ask. So what about the person who becomes a cherish? How come we're exempting him from saying b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam? Zokt Rashi, sh'letachlech b'shlichus shinuyehu loicholku chachamim ben shlich l'shliach. Meaning, once they were chayav a shliach to say b'fani nechtam, they want everyone to say it, even ish l'shlicha. Aval ha de'inu yochol, but in our case, where he's a cherish and he can't say it, lav chilaku. They're not making a distinction from one shliach to the next. Shari hutzach loimer. He also has the chiyuv to say elo sheyemsher, but he can't. So the chiyuv is still there. L'chatchila the takana is still on him, but since he can't, so we find him a plan B. Yachi, once again, if you're saying shalatachlik v'shlichas, or if you're saying musul shlicha, yachi baal nami, the baal as well. Allah matanya. Why is it that we learned that if the baal himself, who atma shevi gitoi, ain't terch loymar b'fani nechtam. If you're telling me shalatachlik v'shlichas, we don't want to make a difference from shliach to shliach, even if it's something that's not a common case. We're still mechayiv the shliach to say b'fani nechtam. So even if the baal is the shliach leilacha, he should also have to say it. I'm sorry? He's not. Technically, he's just the baal. So if the baal brings it from far away, Rashi says, Shekosvai, the Medinas Hayam, Ubokan Lagartha. So it doesn't mean really, the shliach leilacha, it means he's bringing it from far away. So that's not a kasha. Time in my Omer Rabbanan Tzarech Loimer b'fani nechtam is Dilma Osi Baal Ma'ayr Upasalei. The whole reason why they made the takana, because the baal might be ma'ar. If he himself is delivering it, of course he cannot be ma'ar. He himself is the one that's delivering the get. But they don't have to ask him because once he brings it, it's clear. This is what gets from him. Right? So that's why they're not machayif him to say b'fani nechtam. Tashma. The boy minei Shmuel Rab Meir Huna. Shmuel asked Rav Huna an interesting shayla. What happens if it's shnayim sheviu get in Medina Sayam? Now, if you remember, very recently, just at the bottom of Dalet Amud Beis, and as well on Beis Amud Beis, the Gemara wants to know what is the difference to halacha between Rabbah, who holds that there's also a concern of Lishma, and Rabbah, who says there's only a concern of Kiyum. So if we look at the Gemara, Elamai benayu, Ike benai da suya beitre. If two Eidim, two Shluchim bring the get, according to Rabbo, they still have to say b'fani nechtam, because we're still concerned in the Shuv L'Shema. But according to Rabbo, that it's only concern of Kiyam, these two people, they themselves can be Mekayim. So we know that this is a machlekes Rabbo and Rava. When two Eidim bring the get, if they're still required to say b'fani nechtam or b'fani nechtam. So Zokt Gemara, the Baimene Shmuel Marfuna. Shnaim Shiviu get Medinas Hayam, Trichen Shiyaymu b'fanenu nechtam b'fanenu or Eino Trichen. So we know that's totally the machlokes Rabba and Rava. Amr Lei, what did Rav Huna answer? Ein Trichen. Zokt Gemara, Uma Ilu Yaymu b'fanenu Girsha. You know why they don't have to say it? Because if they didn't even bring a get at all, what if two Edom come along and say, we witnessed Rachel get a get from her husband Moshe? Wouldn't they be believed? So if it sure should be believed that this is a good get, and you don't have to ask him any questions. They could say, well, not. They could say they saw them give a get. That's true. That didn't happen, but they could have said it. Let's see Rashi. Umailu yoimru klimer imrotzu hein oimrim alnuma eden shegirsha v'nashin laget aylo shluchaget. So you have another eitzah. We saw him give a shlich l'kabbalah again. So they could have said that. So therefore, their get is automatically believed. Zakt Gemara l'Rava Nicha, because we already said Rava holds in such a case you don't need to say b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam. But l'Rabba Kasher, we said Rava holds that this wouldn't help us to Eidim because you still have a concern of l'shma. Zakt Gemara, we already found the teretz to this kasher. Hacha b'mayaskin and lacha shalom du. This shaila that Shmuel asked from Rafuna, and Rafuna answered that you don't need the two Eidim that bring it. Don't need to say b'fani nechtam. And b'fani nechtam is speaking after it was already known in the world that you need to do it lishma. If that's the case, that there's no more concern, so even one aid shouldn't have to say b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam. Zaktu Gemara, gzeira shamayachser davar l'kol kuloi. We're still worried that things are going to go back to the way they were. Gemara, ihachi beitrei nami. Two Eidim should also require b'fani nechtam al gzeira. Gemara beitrei the ma'asu gita milsad lo shchicha. When two Eidim bring a get, that's something that's not common. Milsad lo shchicha lo yigazer ba rabbanon. The same thing we said before. Dr. Gemara, ba'isha lo shchicha, the same shakal tari as before. Ba'isha lo shchicha, now the isha atma via gita b'vat shehi tzricha loymar b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam. And the Gemara shlo tachlik v'shlichos. But two Eidim, if you look at the Tosfos, shlo tachlik v'shlichos, but two Eidim is not the same thing. Tosfos says shlo tachlik v'shlichos pierce v'shlichos techad. You're not going to make a chiluk that you require always to say b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam. The gazrin and chad the lo shliach or the chad shliach. A woman who's a lo shliach, we're going to she has to say b'fani nechtam or to a regular shliach that does need to say. I will betray or to chad like gazrinan. But because there's a gzera that a single aid should have to say, or a single shliach should have to say b'fani nechtam, that's not going to tell us that two aidim, that two shluchim would have to say it. Zok to Gemara. Are you telling me milsad lo shchiach? Are you telling me shlo tachlik b'shlichos? Every shliach has to say it. Yachi ba'al nami alam atanya hu atzma shevi gito ein tzorich loymar b'fani nechtam b'fani nechtam. The Gemara the same story as before. Time in my Amar Rabban tzorich loymar b'fani nechtam is domo asi ba'al me'ayr upasale. But hashtag here minkit nochet lebi adei v'irei kama ayr alei. You think that the Baal is bringing himself? How could there be any opportunity for error if he himself is bringing the get? So you asked this before in the first Gemara, and Rashi, we had exactly the same case, right? So what does Rashi say? Rashi says, "Shehevi yaskitai shekasvei b'binis hayam uvakan lagarsha." So there'd be a svara to say that you would treat him like a shliach as well. Since the get was written far away, we want to make sure that the get is l'shma, and we want to make sure. Yeah. So I hear you saying, I hear you saying technically it's not a shliach, but the Gemara held that would be a reason to also be mechayim. I hear it's definitely not the same as an isha who's a shliach. Technically, he's not a shliach. It's a good art. It's a good art, but the Gemara held that if the whole part is that people shouldn't forget. It means it's for the Amoinam who might not even chap. There's a difference between him. What's the difference if he's bringing it, somebody else will bring it? But I hear his Zok to Gemara weiter. Zok to Gemara weiter. Hashma, I maybe get in Medina Sayyam. V'nasnu law, v'loy amar law, v'fani nechta, v'fani nechta. Someone brought a get from Medina Sayyam and didn't do what the Mishnah says you're supposed to do. Im niskayim b'chosim of kosher. If you can find two eidim to be makayim to get, it will be kosher. Imla pasuk. Zok the brisa weiter. Hoy loy hutzruchu loymar b'fani nechtav b'fani nechtam l'hachmer alei. The purpose of saying b'fani nechtam and b'fani nechtam was not to make it more difficult for her. Ela l'hakol alei. So therefore, if he didn't say b'fani nechtam, which would have been a kula, because now we're going to be mekayim to get al pi eid echad, you can always go back to the default where you need two eidim to be mekayim. V'im lav el hakale. This makes perfect sense according to Rava, that the entire takana B'fani nechtam is actually a kula, not a chumrah. It's saying you don't need to be mekayim it with two edim. The shliach himself could do the kiyum. But according to Rabbah, there's another reason why you have to say it. As l'shma. So the Rabbah kasha, because even if you're mekayim it b'chaysmav, where do you mitigate the problem of l'shma? And for the Gemara, once again, this brisa that says you can get away with kiyum alone is speaking when there's no longer a chashash of shalei l'shma. Correct the Gemara, the Amrit Gzeira Shema Yachsar double Kulai. Didn't you teach us earlier that even though the Gzeira is not like anymore, because we're worried that things will deteriorate, we continue the mandate of saying B'fani Nechtav and B'fani Nechtav. And for the Gemara Kishanisis, here it's different. You got married already. So what are we going to say? Teitzei v'avlad mamzer? No. L'chatchila, she shouldn't get married because the Gzeira Shema Yachsar double Kulai, and she didn't do the get properly because it didn't say B'fani Nechtav. But she married already. Because of a gzeira that her abundant made, that you should say B'fani Nechtam before you remarry, because of that gzeira, we're not going to force her to divorce her husband because it wasn't done. L'chatchila, they want you to do it. Once she's married already, you won't force her. Correct the Gemara, but that's not what the Brisa says the reason is. Ihachi, the Brisa says, it's only l'chumra, it's not l'kula, it's not l'chumra, it's only l'kula. But that's not the reason why you just need kiyum. The real reason is mishum denisasu. The real reason is that you're not going to force her to get divorced because she's already married. It's not because it's a kula. Forget it, it's a chumrah. It's a chumrah to verify that it was written l'shma, and the only reason why we're waiving that is because you got married already. Dr. Gemara, no, that's not how you read the Brisa. Hachi kamar. If you're going to say that because they violated the takana, and therefore the get isn't good, we force her to get a divorce from her husband. On that, the Brisa says, they didn't do it to be machmer, to make her give up her get divorced, only to be makel. And Rashi explains, what the Brisa means, is only if she already got married. They never made the takana of a B'fani Nechtav and B'fani Nechtav to be a fazoi vayt that if she got married, she'd have to get divorced. Don't say they made the takana with such a severity that if she remarried, we would force her to get a divorce. Really, we only made her do this so she shouldn't have to come on to Eidei Chesima. I'm sorry, to Edom that will be Mekayim Beit Chesima. But once she did it, we're not going to be machmer on her to get divorced from her husband. Zok the Heilige Gemara weiter on Daf Chayamad Beis. Taima Mai. Why aren't we going to make her get divorced? Why don't we make her get divorced? She didn't do the Kodah. Because the whole reason why we need it is Dilma Asi Baal Ma'ar Upasale. What are we worried about? We're worried about worst case scenario that the husband will come, possibly get, and force her to get divorced. Hash the Baal like right now she's remarried, and the Baal is not being Ma'ar. I'm not naked with Ma'ar. We should be the Ma'ar. We wanted to protect her from error. She messed herself up, and now she's not protected from error. We're not going to make the error. We're trying to mitigate the error. We're trying to create a scenario where she'll be protected from the error. She gave up that protection, but we're not going to be Ma'ar. If her husband is Ma'ar, we'll have a problem. But we're not going to be the ones to be Ma'ar. Zok Rashi. Time of my Dilma Asi Baal Ma'ar. The time of my Amar Rabbanon, the boy Lememar. B'fani Nechtav. It's Dilma Asi Baal Ma'ar. Hilchach im Loinisis, if she didn't marry yet, Loishi Nasi, don't get married until we could mitigate that concern. Now that she married already, Amai Lafka, why should she get divorced? Akati Loyasi Baalu Ma'ar. The Baal wasn't Ma'ar. She doesn't have protection from here. But the Baal wasn't Ma'ar yet. So I'm not making Ma'ar. We should be the troublemakers. We're not going to be the troublemakers. If anything, we're trying to fix it. So now she's married. She doesn't have to get divorced. But if her husband's Ma'ar, then she'll have trouble. Zok to Gemara, this machloikus of Rabba and Rava, if you also have to be concerned about Lashema or not, is totally in the machloikus, the pluk to the Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yochanan and Yeshua ben Levi also have this machloikus as to why you need to say B'fani Nechtav or B'fani Nechtav. Chad Amar Levi she'ein b'kiyin l'shma, which is what Rabbi said. The Chad Amar Levi she'ein edim etzuyim l'kaimoi, which is what Rabbi said. Histayim, let's bring a raya. Rabbi Shua ben Levi who the Amar Levi she'ein b'kiyin l'shma. Let's bring a raya that it's Rabbi Shua ben Levi who said that the concern is that they're not b'kiyin l'shma. Rabbi Shimon bar Abba. Rabbi Shimon bar Abba was an Adam Choshev Ad Ma'od, as the Gemara will soon tell us. Yosy Gita l'kamed Rabbi Shua ben Levi. He was once upon a time a shliach leilacha, and he brought a get from some husband in some faraway land to present at the best in Rabbi Shua ben Levi. And he asked the dying. He asked Rabbi Shua ben Levi, do I need to say it or not? Rabbi Shua ben Levi told him, you do not have to say and he explained himself. Only the earlier generations where they were not Bekim in Lashma, that's where the takana of B'fani Nechtam was said. Nowadays, Baruch Hashem, we have so much Torah in the belt, and the Talmidei Chacham everywhere, the Bekim Lashma, you don't need to say B'fani Nechtam. To mark this time, and this is pretty much black and white, that the Rabbi Shua ben Levi says that the takana of B'fani Nechtam and B'fani Nechtam is based on Lashma. Oh, Gavaltik with his perfect Gemara. Well, Rabbi Islay the Rabba. Rabbi holds with Rabba as well. So, why did Rabbi Shua ben Levi say that you don't have to say it? You still need a kiyum. There's still a problem of kiyum. But I love when you ask the Gemara's kasha because it means we're much in the game. But didn't we also say that even though today people are learned, but we still continue on the takana? Why? Because we're afraid things could change. So that cannot be the reason why Rabbi Shua ben Levi didn't require the B'fani Nechtam and B'fani Nechtam to be said by Rabbi Shimon bar Abba. You know what really happened? Rabbi Shimon bar Abba didn't come by himself. Rabbi Shimon bar Abba came with somebody else. So we already learned that if two Eidim that came, there they weren't Machayev you to say B'fani Nechtam, B'fani Nechtam. Rabbi Shimon bar Abba in the so therefore there's no concern of Rava because we said you don't have to be B'fani Nechtam because they're Mekayim it already. There's two Eidim. They are two as themselves. And as far as the Lishma, it's a Misl L'Shchicha. So how come Rabbi Shua ben Levi in his psak didn't mention that? And he made it sound like it was because today we don't have a problem. So tomorrow, because Mishum Kvoided Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon was such a chosh of a person, he didn't even want to mention that it's because of the other person that came with him. So he just asking that today there's no problem with Lishma. And the reason why we're not geyser is the milsa the law shchicha. The Baltic. Look Rashi. Rashi says, where is Rashi? Who says that he was a chosh of Yid? Rashi says over here. He doesn't say, but Bivalti was an Adam Choshev Ad Moed. Bivalti was an Adam Choshev Ad Moed. He didn't even want to mention that there was such an issue. Okay, Gavaltik. Zog to Gemara now another shaila. So we just discussed that there's another machloikis that is relevant to the shaila of Rab and Rava, and that's the machloikis between Rabbi Shua ben Levi and Rabbi Yochanan. So let's make something very clear. Rabbi Yochanan clearly holds that why do you need to say B'fani Nechtam, B'fani Nechtam? That's only because of Kiyum. He holds like Rabba, because we've already proven that Rabbi Shua ben Levi holds like Rabba. He holds the Indian of Lashma. So what we need to take out of this Gemara, in order for us to understand the next Gemara, is that Rabbi Yochanan, although the Gemara didn't directly address it, Rabbi Yochanan is the one who holds that the reasoning for the B'fani Nechtam is like Rabba, because we need to be able to be Mekayim together. Zog to Gemara. Itmar. Zog Gemara na Machloikis. We had this earlier. When the Shliach Leilacha presents the get, how many people are there during this process of the Gershon? Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chanina, there's a Machloikis, Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chanina. One of these two said there only needs to be two people there. And the other one says you need three people there. Histayim, let's bring a raya. Rabbi Yochanan Huda Amar b'fnei Shnayim. That Rabbi Yochanan holds it needs to be. You only need two people there. The Rabbin Bar Rav Chisda, Ravin, the son of Reb Chisda, Ravin, the son of Reb Chisda, said as follows. Yosy Gita, he brought a get. So he was a shliach to bring a get. He brought a get and presented it to Kamed Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was the dayan of that bezin, where Ravin bar Reb Chisda brought the get. V'amarlei, and Rabbi Yochanan instructed the shliach, Ravin bar Chisda, zil havla ba'apetrei. Give her a get in front of two people. Ve'emalahu, and say at the time of the nesinas a get, b'fani nechtav, u'b'fani nechtav. The tomorrow at this time, you have a clear raya that they only have to give the get over in front of two, because that's exactly what he said. Give it there in front of two. What is the machlokes? Why should you give it over in front of two? Why should you give it over in front of three? Let's suggest that this is the machlokes. The mandam of Shnayim, Rabbi Yochanan, who we're saying now, told us that you only have to give it over in front of two. He holds because it's not bekin l'shma. And the only reason why you're saying b'fani nechtam is to make sure that it's l'shma. So therefore, as long as there's two eidim watching the get, everything will be fine. But uman damer b'fnei shloisha kosavar, the reasoning for it is levisha ein eidim etzuin l'kaimoi, and therefore, when you're saying b'fani nechtam, you have to say it in front of a bezdin, because kim shtoris has to be in front of a bezdin. Therefore, you would need three people. Yeah. So let's see what the Gemara says. Zokt Gemara, Zokt Rashi, Lefisha ein bekiyin, Hilchach betray sagi. So Rabbi Yochanan was told that it's all about Lishma, and therefore it's enough to give over the get in front of two people. The Lahava Sahadi, they should testify. The Amar Shliach b'fani nechtav, and therefore Yosy Baal Suma'ar Loi Mashkechinim Be, we won't listen to him. Why? Because they already said b'fani nechtav in front of two people. But if you need three people, it's Lisha Ein Eidim Etzuin L'Kaimai. The Kivin the Likiyumahu, but in Tlasa you need three. Kedamin B'Ksuvas Perek Sheni, the Key Mishtaris is B'Shloisha. Correct the Gemara, you cannot say this is part of the Machlokes. Because we just said a minute ago, V'Tizber Hamid Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Amar Levi Bekin L'Shma, we said it's Rabbi Shua ben Levi who holds the reason for the Takana is Ein Bekin L'Shma. And Rabbi Yochanan says it's Lisha Ein Eidim Etzuin L'Kaimai. Therefore, V'Hacha, Heichi Kam Rabbi Yochanan B'Fnei Shnayim. If the reason why B'fnei Shloisha is because it's Kiyum, and Rabbi Yochanan, we know also, holds that the reason for the Takana B'fnei Nechtav is because of Kiyum, how could Rabbi Yochanan say over here too? You just told me a minute ago that if there's Kiyum happening here, you need three. That's question number one. Question number two, the Oid HaRabba Islay, the Rabba. Rabba holds of Rabba anyway. So even if you hold the Svarat of Shem Bekin L'Shma, you also need Kiyum. So Mimonashich, you should need three people to give the get over. Ella, what you have to say is the Chula Alma Be'inan Eidim Etzuin L'Kaimah. You're right, everybody holds that it's Eidim Etzuin L'Kaimah. The question is it enough to have two for Kiyum, or do you need to have three for Kiyum? Well, you need to have three, because you need to have a bezdin. So how could you say two is enough? Hacha b'shliach nasa eid, ve'eid nasa dayin kamipali. We want the shliach who's saying b'fani nechtam, to become an aid, because he's saying b'fani nechtam. And then we want him to be part of the bezdin. So he is not only saying the testimony, but while he's saying that testimony to be mekayim the star, he's also considered part of the two people to make a bezdin of three. So he's basically playing two roles in this Maisa. That's right. Man number b'fnei shnayim, kasav shliach nasa eid ve'eid nasa dayin. And therefore you only need to have two people there, which is the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. Even though Rabbi Yochanan holds that it's also requires kiyum. Man number b'fnei gimel, kasav shliach nasa eid ve'ein eid nasa dayin. Let's see Rashi over here. The shliach nasa eid, the eid nasa dayin committed. We claim our yamrinon ki heichid the shliach nasa eid, hachanami eid nasa dayin committed. Because everybody holds for sure shliach nasa eid. Because if you're saying b'fani nechem, you're an eid. Question: Can you take it a step further and say that this eid also now becomes a dayin? Mandam b'fnei shtayim kasavar ki heichid the shliach nasa eid, hachanami eid nasa dayin. Hilchach mitzdaref ba'dayu have a tlosa. You have three eid. You have three dayanim. No, we're talking about Kiyum. He's being an eight for Kiyum stars. So it's the Fani Nechtam. I understand, but Rashi is saying clearly the reason why you need three people to make the gershon chal, you don't need three. No, the only reason why you need three is for kiyum stars. So the shaila here of eid nasadayin is only the gabi kiyum stars. But we don't stretch it further and say ein eid nasadayin. Gemara, it doesn't make sense to say that this is a machlokes because we know for a fact b'derabanan, when there's a shaila b'derabanan, which this is over here, the eid nasadayin. Exactly what you said. Amrina b'ksubis shloisha sheyashu l'kayim is a star. The kara error al echad mehen. Ba'avinim of the Gemara asked there. Remember the eid nasadayin umashvinan hanamidli be'edus hachodesh deraisa. Abu b'derabon eid nasadayin. So there was a tashakal of Italia over there. If eid nasadayin, the Gemara said, yeah, there could be a shayla by deraisa if eid nasadayin. But by kiyum stars for sure, eid nasadayin. So why would anybody hold you need three? The Mars over Kivan the Isha Ksheir obvious again. Since it's possible that a woman could bring a get. We know a woman could be a shliach leilacha. So zimnin demaisa itza. What are you going to do if a lady brings a get? V'samchi Allah, and you'll be samich on her, and that means you'll allow her to be one of the three. Yes, eid nasadayin, but that's only if the eid happens to be kosher to be a dayin. What if the shliach used here was not kosher to be a dayin? So you'd have a problem, and you would think it worked, but it wouldn't work because then you would need three people. So because of that, you always need three people. The edich who holds two people is enough. Isha people will know that. You don't have to worry that people will think, make a mistake, that even if a lady comes with a star, with the get, that you can use her to be one of the young. People will know. You don't need such a gzeir. So the bottom line is the whole machlokes, whether or not you need two or three, is better two is enough because eid nasadayin. The whole question is are we choshed that if a woman would come and people wouldn't chop, therefore I always have three so there's an extra man. This is not shalav shlichus anymore. Because that's at the kana by shlichus. This is a whole different shayla. Do you need to be worried that there'll be mitzvah for a lady to a best? We have a right to Rabbi Yochanan that two is enough. Maybe get when we didn't say yom, and they gave her the get, and they didn't say it. So and she remarried, and she had a child. The get is possible. Yosy va'avlad mamzer divrei meir. This makes the blood into a mamzer. Why is it? Because we said earlier, according to Reb Meir, we'll see soon it's a matei shtav b'chachamim. The chachamim ain't a blood mamzer. The blood's not a mamzer. So how do you fix this? Case the jasa. What should you do? Do a do-over. Yitlenu heimena. Take the get back from her. Give it back to the shliach. The yachzer b'yitnenu lo b'fnei shnayim. Let the shliach give her the get again. And this time in front of two edim. It says two edim. So this is how you have a raya to Rabbi Yochanan. The yomer b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav. Correct the Gemara, Reb Meir, Yishum the Chachamim. On Reb Meir. No, the Chachamim is a Tana. Yeah, it's a Tana. So you have arrived from the Chachamim to Rabbi Yochanan that you only need two Eidim. Correct the Gemara, Reb Meir, Yishum the Le'amar b'fani nechtav u'b'fani nechtav yotzi b'avad mamzer. He violated the Kohen Rabbanan. Because of that, it makes the blood into a mamzer. The Gemara in, yes, Reb Meir is very serious. Reb Meir Amar of Amnuna Mishmei de Ula, Oimer Hoyer Reb Meir. Reb Meir used to say, if the Chachamim designate an exact nusach to say, and you violate that, if you don't precisely follow the exact instructions, Yotzi Vavlad Mamzer. The vlad is completely, the vlad is a mamzer because the get is not a get. Dr. Gemara Baiter. Barhedja, boy la suyigita. Barhedja came to bring a get. He was also a shliach. Also the kamei, Rab Achi. He came to Rab Achi. Why did he come to Rab Achi? To have a Mamun Agiti. Rab Achi was the get person of the city. Mamun Agiti is Dr. Rashi. So also the kamei Rab Achi, but Oisa Ir so you kois for Noisai. He was a Mamun Agiti. The Kaimelon Kol Shein Yideh, but Tiv Gittin V'Kedushin, Loyal Eisik Iman. They would normally appoint a choshev l'ruya hechanava to instruct people how to make the get. So he came to Rabacha, and Rashi makes it very clear. He's not over here in the city that he's delivering it to. He was appointed to be a shliach leilacha. So before he went to be the shliach leilacha, he asked Rabacha, "Tell me exactly what I should do in order to fulfill my duty as a shliach leilacha." Amalei, he told him, and this answers what Chaim said. Chaim once asked me, "Do you have to see it, or you just have to say it?" So Rabacha told him, since you're going to say b'fani nechtav, you better stand there and watch the cipher write every last detail of that get, because otherwise, how can you testify b'fani nechtav? So you actually have to watch it. Also, the Kamei Rabasi. Then he went to ask Rabami Rabasi what he should do to be a good shliach leilacha. Amalei, they told him, nah, don't worry. You don't have to watch the cipher write every last word. As Rashi says on the last Rashi, it's enough if you just watch him write one row. And don't say, no, I'm going to watch the all get, I'm going to be machmer. That's not, don't be machmer. Don't be a tzaddik. You know why? Because if people see that you watch the whole get being written, then previously there has been other getting written where the shliach leilacha only saw parts of it being written. And people are going to say, those earlier getting must not be good, because you're supposed to, the shliach leilacha is supposed to watch the whole get. So don't be fafrum. You're only going to mess things up. Rabbi Babarchana Aisi Gita, Halga Ichtiv Kamei, Halga Lo Ichtiv Kamei. He was a shliach leilacha, but he couldn't say b'fani nechtav the whole thing. Only half of the get he witnessed it being written. Also, the Kamei Rabbi Lazar, Amalei Afidu leKosav Boy Elashita Achas Lishma Shuvein Yitzarach. Exactly like what Rabbi Amin Rabasi told him. It's enough if you saw only one line being written, as Tosfos says, the bottom Tosfos, Pir Shalei Ra Elashita Rishona the Mistamis Haimel Lishma. As long as you saw the first line being written Lishma, you can assume and you can testify that the b'fani nechtav Lishma. Rabashi says, going on to Amar Aleph, Afidu kan kulmusa v'kan megilta. What are these things? A kan kulmusa and kan megilta. Zokt Rashi, Tikun akol mois v'aklaf shama. Means he wasn't even there to witness the writing. He just heard the cipher sharpening his quill. Kisheteknu l'shma, and he heard him as he was sharpening his quill. I'm getting ready to write the get for Moshe and Bracha. And all he heard was the preparation of the quill. Or when they're cutting to trim the cloth that they're using. That's enough to be able to say b'fani nechta. You're not even seeing the writing. The lean there is a Rashi that it means something else. Tan Kol Musa is koil hakulmus kishukaisim. He didn't hear the preparations. He actually heard the writing happening. The koil hayuriya shehu nishma k'moisha omer kan. I guess you hear the tick tick as every time he touches the quill to the parchment. There's a small sound. It's that noise that he heard. That's enough to be able to say b'fani nechta. Tanya kabasa derbashi. I maybe get Medina Sayom. I feel hu b'bayis. Even if he's in the house on the main level, the sofer ba'aliyah and the sofer who's writing the get is on the second floor, or hu ba'aliyah, he's on the second floor. The sofer b'bayis, or afilu nichlas v'yoyte koliyam kuloi, or he's just going in and out. Kosher, it will be kosher. Break the Gemara. How could that be? Hu b'bayis v'sofer ba'aliyah. If he's in a different room on a different floor, how could he say b'fani nechtav? Haloi kachazilei. You can't see somebody writing if you're not even on his floor, you're not even on his level. Elalab, going to Shama, kan kalmuza the kan megilta. So this supports what Rabashi said, that you actually don't have to see the writing. If you even hear the writing, and you know that it's being done lishma because you heard him saying, I'm writing it lishma, then you hear the writing, that's good enough to say b'fani nechtav and b'fani nechtav. Amar Mar. So now let's analyze this brayso we just quoted. It says, I feel nichnas v'yoytze kolayam kulay kosher. Break the Gemara, I don't understand. Man, it says even if he was in and out the whole time, who's in and out? Ilema shliach, if the shliach was in and out, meaning he's in and out watching the sofer write it. If he himself is in and out watching the shliach write it, do I need the brayso to tell me that that's good? Hashtahu b'bayis b'sofer b'aliyah d'loy chazilei. We just said in the brayso a greater chiddush, where he didn't even see the cipher at all. He was at a completely different level. So he never, ever saw any writing going on. Yet the Brisa said Amr kosher. So nichnas v'yotzim b'boy. Do I need a Brisa to tell me an additional chiddush that he was in and out, where he actually saw the Sefer writing it part of the time? For sure, that would be good enough to say b'fali nechtav. Ella, when the Brisa says afilu nichnas v'yotzim kol yom kula, he's kosher, it's not talking about the shliach. It's talking about the Sefer, meaning the Sefer was interrupted by his work. He couldn't write it in one shot. He was in and out and in and out. Just because he came in and out, that should passel it. Where did he go? He went to the shuk, where he meets many people. There's a lot of action there. And he came back. You might think in the Shakrina Ashkefe, you might think he's in the middle of writing a get for Reuven and Bracha Moskowitz. He might have been in the shuk, and he bumped into Reuven Fleischer, and Reuven Fleischer told him to write a get for Rachel Fleischer. And you might think that since he met somebody else, now when he comes back, maybe he'll get mixed up and continue the get that he started for Reuven Moskowitz, and now he's going to write it for Reuven Fleischer. Kamash Lund, you don't have to worry. The Sefer will be able to keep track of who he's writing the get for. Okay, let's stop here, Be'ez Hashem, and we'll be mamshech tomorrow. Gittin Chodesh, Mazel Chodesh.